Hi everyone and anime fans, welcome back to my channel Ranime. So let's start the video, ranking One Piece major arcs from worst to best. As we all know, One Piece is the greatest anime of all time and every arc of it is just too great, but still we have to rank them, so let's do it. And the rankings are based on the impact of the arc and the epicness and greatness of the characters, and majorly the story and the enjoyment we have received from the arcs. So now let's start the ranking. At number 31, 𝙍𝘼𝙉𝙆𝙄𝙉 arc. It is a great arc, but at last position compared to others. At number 30, Fishman Island arc. Now don't get me wrong, I adore Fishman Island for the build-up and the backstory and the connection to the Joy Boy, but the main villain Hardy Jones drags down the entire arc. At number 29, Punk Hazard arc. This is where the new world started. And the Iceland design was very cool and the intro of the Warlord Law was amazing. But it all falls flat and it is a small part of the greatest story that is going to be shown after. At number 28, Long Ring Long Land arc. Yes, it is not the worst arc of One Piece. It has best comedy moments but still lacks many things and the character just become annoying. At number 27, the Orange Town arc. The introduction of the legendary character Buggy and also Nami, this arc was fun and great. At number 26, Reverse Mountain arc. It is where the Grand Line started and the Lagoon introduced, and especially the design and the world building of One Piece world shown is brilliant. At number 25, Thriller Bark arc. It has some of the best comedy moments in the series, and the great intro of Brook and the iconic Nothing Happened Zoro panel, but the length of this arc dragged it down. At number 24, Whole Cake Iceland arc. The arc was amazing with some of the coolest characters introduced, especially Katakuri, but still not as great as other arcs. At number 23, Little Garden arc. The hunting ground for two warriors and the first mention of Elbaf. It is a fantastic arc. At number 22, Amazon Lily arc. A great introduction of Boa Hancock and power of Haki, and a good build-up to the Marineford. At number 21, Post-War arc. The loss of the two great characters, and the most emotional One Piece arc which makes it more popular among fans, and the backstory was so wonderful. At number 20, Jaya arc. The most mysterious island in the Grand Line, and the introduction of the iconic Blackbeard. The arc was totally amazing. At number 19, Romance Down arc. A great beginning where the One Piece started, and the intro of the two most iconic and legendary characters in the entire anime world, Monkey D. Luffy and Roro Noa Zoro. At number 18, Return to 𝙬𝙬 arc. 2 years after the war, the crew returned in the most coolest way. At number 17, Level E arc. Now don't be upset, this arc introduced the main One Piece villain and the mysterious Shanks appearance to the Holy Land, but still there was not much in this arc to deserve a higher rank. At number 16, Lockdown arc. This arc was the most amazing and introduced to the most legendary character Monkey D. Dragon. At number 15, Whiskey Peak arc. The first Grand Line Island and a great arc with twist and the iconic Zoro vs 100 Hunters battle. At number 14, Drum Island arc. The introduction of Chopper and the iconic Dr. Hiruluk, a most emotional arc with one of the sweetest self-contained stories. At number 13, Zou arc, a mind-blowing arc which shocks the fans to the core. The giant elephant, the samurai and the road poneglyph were all just brilliantly set up. At number 12, Baratie arc. This entire arc was so much fun and amazing. The Sanji intro and the legendary Mihawk introduction was insane. This arc was totally fire. At number 11, Dressrosa arc. I loved Dressrosa arc. The Lucy, the Colosseum fights, the story and the backstories were outstanding. And the Kairos backstory was one of the best. The entire arc was incredible. At number 10, Skypiea arc. Most people skip this arc, but it is the most amazing and connected arc to the One Piece mysteries. The main villain God Andrew was outstanding, and the whole Skypiea setup makes this arc deserve a top 10 ranking. At number 9, Egghead arc. The future tone, the incredible costumes and designs, and especially the story is making this arc a truly wonderful piece of One Piece. At number 8, Water 7 arc. The most amazing world building in One Piece. The entire Water 7 island was insane and the layers of mysteries makes this arc very special. At number 7, 𝙬𝙬 arc. The first Straw Hat defeat, the intro of First Generation and Celestial Dragons, and especially Dark King Rayleigh, and the iconic most satisfying Luffy punch and the whole 𝙬𝙬 setup makes this arc a gem in One Piece. At number 6, Impel Down arc. Impel Down is one of the coolest and most dangerous arc. To save Ace, Luffy can go beyond anything. This arc truly shows that, and the return of many great characters makes it more special, and the whole Impel Down design is brilliant. At number 5, Wano arc. A true masterpiece arc that represents everything that is great about One Piece. And the Gear 5th transformation was just mind-blowing. The whole setup, the story, the backstory, the character was insanely good. At number 4, Arlong Park arc, one of the most iconic shots in the series, the most special arc for One Piece fans. The characters, the story, the epicness, greatness, everything was god tier level. This is where One Piece becomes peak One Piece. At number 3rd, Alabasta arc, one of the most bittersweet farewell in One Piece. The first big arc, the characters, the story, the whole setup was once in a lifetime experience. The most memorable One Piece arc is this. At number 2nd, Enies Lobby arc, the best One Piece arc. This arc was One Piece peak. The Sogeking introduction, the whole going merry thing, the Robin setup, and the Buster Call and the CP9, and the battles were iconic. And Luffy's gear 2nd and 3rd were insane. Everything was perfect in this arc. And at the number 1, Marineford arc. This is the greatest One Piece arc. The legendary war that happens between Navy and pirates, the Whitebeard, the Navy admirals, the Luffy entry, everything was out of the world. And the emotional ending, which truly makes One Piece really a masterpiece. And at last, as Whitebeard said, the One Piece is real. That's it for today. If you agree with my list, hit that like button, comment down your favorite arc, and subscribe to my channel for more.